Proteins provide power to every part of the cell. Our guest today is no different, providing the backbone and charm to creative endeavors. Endeavors such as Five Nights as fuzzboobs, playing the role of Bonnie Protest. Their skills transcend beyond voice acting, working in 3D modeling with an emphasis on Withered Bonnie. It's safe to say Five Nights at Freddy's has sparked Protein's creative fire. But the thing on everyone's mind, Proteins, is will you be returning to your role when Five Nights at Fuzzboobs 2 gets announced?
I'm trying to think of the answer. So, because of the because of the way that Five Nights at Fuzzboobs 1 was originally developed, Five Nights at Fuzzboobs 2 is very up to interpretation. However, if Five Nights at Fuzzboobs 2 ever were to be created, I believe the creator of Five Nights at Fuzzboobs 1 will actually do it if they were paid, I believe, $950. Um, if that goal ever does get met, then yes, I definitely will be returning for Five Nights at Fuzzboobs 2. And I will have a more lore related role in the series, especially for three. I'm actually going to be a main character in three. But as for two, I mean, if it happens, then I'll be there, you know?
Yeah, you'll love to see it. Um, I don't know if you know this, Tom, but me and Proteins have talked a fair amount about, I guess, Five Nights at Freddy's like fan created games. I know your opinion on porn esque games is a bit on the, I guess, other side of the spectrum. I don't know if you want
No,
to go into
I
that.
don't know if
No?
I've accidentally made that perception, but that's not true at all. I like porn games. I I think it's personally if the game is too much of a game and like it's not like fun story, then I lose interest because I'm just here like to jerk off and I'm like spending 40 hours with reading dialogue. But there have been a few that have charmed me and been like, you know what, I am just playing this for the game at this point, and it'll be nice when I get to the porn scenes.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, like I've talked about, like I wouldn't want to play like Cloud Meadow because that game looks boring as shit, even though the animations are incredible. But I like games that are well made that are like porn games. I'm sorry if
Yeah, that's
if
always
I accidentally if your whole plan was like to have an A side and a
no.
B side.
Well, no, no. I just wanted to know, get your kind of gist of your opinions
Hmm.
on porn
I
games because it's
also,
a pretty
even the ones I don't like as games, I still respect them artistically.
yeah. Because there's like I think there's this whole point of contention with just porn games in general. I mean, the fact that you have to say porn game kind
Hmm.
of you don't really say that when it comes. I mean, you do with like video games in general. You're like, oh, that's a first person shooter, or that's like that's Pac Man or whatever. It's like, but at the end of the day, they're games. But I feel like a lot of people have to always specify, like, yes, this is a porn game, and yeah, you could just say that's because you have to be 18 plus to play this
Well,
game or
it's
whatever. But
typically because the primary reason you play the game is for the porn.
hmm yeah, and like any video game, like you play a first person shooter because you
Yeah.
want to shoot shit, right? But then there's things that can, like, transcend that, where it's like, Portal's a first-person shooter, but,
Hmm.
it's more puzzle-based, um, and, I think the main reason we have Proteins on is, they have a very, I guess, sort of insightful, view on these kind of products being not shilled out, but rather, like, being made right now, and there's a lot of, I feel like there's a lot of, games being made specifically in the porn genre that tend to, get rushed out or, just turn a quick buck because they know they can get away with it with, the whole concept just being like, it doesn't have to necessarily be a quality game or a, it's all just eye candy at the end of the day, so why bother making a good game? But for example, the game that Proteins is a voice actor on, Fri uh,
Five Nights at
Fuzzboobs.
Fuzz Boobs, yeah.
Yeah, Five Nights at yeah, Five Nights at Fuzzboobs. It, it definitely goes above and beyond just simple eye candy. I don't know if you wanna go in on that, Proteins, because you certainly know a lot about that game, um, being a voice actor, but also just playing and just knowing kinda like the dev. team.
Yeah, well, so definitely Five Nights at Fuzz Boobs is a very, very, very much so a passion project. Wasn't made to make money. Legally, they can't really make money off of it. They don't have a well, they didn't have a Patreon for the game at first. They do now, but it's not really a Patreon for the game. It's more so a Patreon for the actual artist because his original Patreon was taken down. So he made a new one and he just renamed it Fuzzboobs just so he could have some sense of familiarity with his own brand. But Five Nights at Fuzzboobs is a very massive passion project for specifically the artist Glazed. He's been wanting to make it for years, and there's actually quite a bit of story that goes beyond that. But yeah, the reason why it's just so good is because they really wanted to make it extremely close to the original, just as a remake, really. And I think they captured that energy really well. Sure, they did change around. Like the kitchen now has a camera, and the kitchen you can actually look into. Some of the layouts a bit different, but the design principles of Five Nights at Freddy's are all still there. You can't really mess up a game that's supposed to be another game, but with more, porn elements and with more, what's it called? Quality of life updates,
Oh
such
yeah.
as you can select the night that you want to play, right? You can, 420 mode is a lot easier to access. The animatronic AI is very close to the original Five Nights at Freddy's 1. There's actually an entire about 40-minute video that goes into the AI that Twist used. Twist is the developer, by the way, to base the AI off of. However, that video was not entirely accurate. So a lot of the early dev builds, the very beginning, those are fucked. Foxy, for example, is way too aggressive. Freddy was also completely bugged in the original version, as opposed to the definitive edition, which we have now. Foxy just completely fucked. Didn't work at all. I mean, well, she did work. She was just way too aggressive. Took too much power. She was basically, the worst part. Freddy was also completely bugged. Freddy's aggression did not align with the AI levels, which are
Mm.
how the animatronics difficulty is indicated 1 through 20, just like 420 mode from the original Five Nights at Freddy's. And they really with definitive edition they really went above and beyond. um it's not really it's kind of crazy to think that only two people are behind the entire creation of this game. Besides like the voice actors, there was only one artist, that was Glazed. He drew everything all by himself, right? Except for like the fan art Easter eggs, but they're just Easter eggs. They're just neat little additions, right? They're nothing serious. And Twist, single-handedly made the game in 7 months. They're the only programmer. They had no assistants. They did it all by themselves. Really proud of her. But yeah, it's kind of crazy how they really just did do it. And I was involved. I got the two together actually. Fun fact. That was me. I knew Glaze before I knew about Fuzzboobs. I knew Twist before I knew about Fuzzboobs. And in passing conversation, I was just like, oh yeah, one of my friends is gonna be making a Five Nights at Freddy's game, but they don't really have a good developer. And Twist volunteered themselves, and the rest is history. Now we have Five Nights at Fuzzboobs, and I want to say it is the best Five Nights at Freddy's not safe for work game that there is currently out there.
Oh yeah.
I've played several. I don't think any of them compare remotely to the quality of just fuzzboobs. It's
hmm
just so good, in comparison to everything else. It just blows it all out the water.
Yeah, hands down. I mean, if anyone has the interest to kind of take a look, take a little peek, see at it, it's truly night and day looking at the first and the second build. Because the first build was already late leagues above, and then the second build is just like perfect polish. It's the icing on top of a finished project, honestly. And
Definitely.
it's just fascinating to me hearing about this kind of like development team start kind of just like grow this kind of grassroots effort where it's like That's what really it's all about. I mean, even on this Discord server that Tom runs, it's like that's kind of like the whole crux of why we're
Yeah.
here and why we're doing this podcast is to get people to kind of get out of their zones and really interact with every other artist and then make those connections because it's truly an undertaking being the only person working on your project and then trying to get everything done on it. It's leagues easier when you have multiple or just one other person just being able to help you out with one other main thing that would have taken you just as much, if not longer, because you don't have the experience to kind of complete this huge project that you really want to, do. Because it, as much as it is great to be a Twitter artist or just something like that and just post, whips or drawings, it's a whole other different experience just being able to develop or just make like a full-fledged animation that's like 10 minutes and the quality's there and not only because you did it but because you were able to get people to help you do it. um I guess I, to go in on that a little bit more, I would love eventually, I would love to have, the creators on as well, but, talking with you, Proteins, about, kind of other FNAF-esque, spin-off games, we see this a lot, like, a lot because just how popular FNAF is, but it's something completely, mind-boggling to see, this porn game that I guess for all intents purposes, not a lot of people would take seriously because of the fact that it's made to, be porn, but, there's so much, like, amazing detail within the programming alone that, is truly, like, awe-inspiring because being able to program and, like, almost emulate the exact quality of the first Five Nights at Freddy's without, like, looking at the source code or being able to, like, copy it, and you're just going off of how the game plays from your perspective. It's, it's it's insanely hard to do that kind of meticulous, like, tweaking and kind of not necessarily copying, but, like, keeping to the tradition of the original game so that you can have this full-fledged experience, be just true to the franchise while also having your own, secret sauce put into it.
Most definitely. I would say the playtesting for it was very extensive, especially me on my part. I played that game for I want to say when it first came out, I played it to completion. And the very first night it was out, I was only 2 hours late because I was out doing some errands. I don't remember exactly, but I played it for like 3 4 hours straight, just in front of my friends, just having shooting the shit, having a great time. But even then, I mean, it was very obvious that like things were not right. So I'm glad that because I played definitive edition, I finished definitive edition, and I can tell like all the errors in the coding for the animatronics were fixed. Foxy is not all fucked up anymore. The animatronics, they stay at your door for as long as they're supposed to. Freddy is fixed too. She's as aggressive as she should be. Um, One of the biggest errors with Freddy in the original game was that every single night she was active, she was on the same timer. She would always attack at the same time and only once a night. So the one time that you had her that one night, you block her and you don't have to worry about her anymore, and that takes away from the overall experience of helplessness that the original Five Nights at Freddy's gave you. Because Freddy can't be seen on the cameras, or he can, but just barely. The only thing you have to indicate his movement is his laugh, and in fuzzboobs it's a giggle, girly giggle, but still. So I'm
Mhm.
really glad that most of the kinks were ironed out. Chica and Bonnie, they work perfectly. Foxy works fine. Freddy works good. Golden Freddy is a little counterintuitive, but they fixed her too. She was actually a bit different in the original release of fuzzboobs, and she works now. She works properly. So like Twist definitely did my assistance with Foxy in particular, because Twist actually had to fix Foxy about 3 different
Oh
times.
wow.
In the 1.4 version, she was fucked. In the 1.5 version, the version after, was fucked too. And then in the 1.6 version, which was the final version of the original Fuzzboobs, she was still fucked. But now in definitive edition, she definitely works as intended, as she should. And so Foxy, yeah, Foxy was probably the biggest hurdle for fuzzboobs, just strictly because of how, she's supposed to interact with like the cameras, how you need to look at the cameras, not necessarily her, but you have to look at her to see if she's moved, et cetera, et cetera. So she's easily probably the hardest animatronic to work with, for fuzzboobs. But she works now, so that's what matters.
Yeah, yeah, you love to see it. You love to see just any developer really, whether it's just anything, whether it's on itch.io or Steam. It's like people who keep to their creations just keep, you know, slowly adding that polish on over time. It really shows how much these creators that really do care about their projects, as well as
Hmm.
just, you know, being able to put in the extra, elbow grease as far as being like, the first go around we did what we wanted, but it's not what the fans would want, right? It's not what we would want. And to go the extra mile and actually remake the game and then improve the AI, the programming so that it is basically a one for one. This is what I expect out of a Five Nights at Freddy's game. This is great. And let alone, it doesn't matter if you're playing the game for the porn or for the gameplay. The fact that the gameplay is there is makes it leagues above any other game, honestly, because not a lot of people will go out the extra mile to focus on what makes the game a game, and that is the gameplay, right? Some people would like to make a story, or some people would like to have interesting visuals, but I think for a lot of people out there who just want to have a fun experience, it's really the gameplay that kind of holds all of that together to really make for a complete experience.
Most definitely, most definitely. I'm
Hmm.
really glad. What's it called? There was oh, fun fact actually. Because Unity did the whole thing where it's like, oh, you have to pay to use Unity now. It's no longer free. Uh, Twist actually had to remake the entire game from scratch in a Godot engine, because they didn't want to pay the fine
Yeah.
for Unity. And ever since Unity said that thing, Twist was hard at work fixing or remaking the entire game in Godot, and they got it out just in time for the new year, which I think is really impressive that they were able to actually accomplish such a feat,
Hmm.
in such little time. I mean, they've made the game like several times, but this is a new game engine. To
Yeah.
remake the game in a completely new engine, right, with such limited time just to get it out for the new year, because that's when Unity was doing the whole charging thing. It's really impressive. It really shows her dedication to the project itself.
Yeah, it's outstanding. I mean, there's a lot of games being made with Godot nowadays, even before the whole Unity debacle, because they updated to like 4.0 Godot, or it's 3.0. But it's that engine has come a long way, and like the developers for that engine alone have so much like care and like integrity when it comes to their own engine. It's honestly awe-inspiring because it makes you wanna develop for that engine just seeing the
Oh
actual
yeah.
people build and update it.
When I started
It
trying to
it's
learn it, it was because of like 4.0 came out and everyone was going fucking crazy for it, and I was like, you know what? Unity's falling apart. I want to learn to code. I should get Godot and figure it out.
Mhm.
Haven't made anything with it yet. I'm very bad with that kind of like the technical stuff, code and shit like that. But it's something I still really want to learn. And I hope it doesn't get too big and go down the shitter in 10 years.
I don't imagine it will be because, for those who aren't aware what Godot is, the best description I could ever give about Godot is it's the blender for, like, gaming engines because it's the same kind of core concept where it's like, we wanna make something that everyone can use, and yeah, it's a little kinda crowdsourcey, we get help from everyone, but at the end of the day, it's a good product that does work even if
I
even if
mean,
it's bogged down by a lot of menus and stuff
it's
like
it's
that.
quite literally open source, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's the same concept with Blender, so, yeah, it's honestly just a good product because of that, simple fact, and there's plenty of ways that, and this is a genius way, by the way, that Godot makes money with their kinda open source engine is that they actually sell, kind of courses on how to program as well as like everything else you'd ever want to know about Godot. And it's just like a very convenient way to learn the engine. And you know, I'll say this much: if you're really weighing the scales when it's like, should I go to college for coding if I just want to learn how to like program video games, or should I like spend like $20 on this like Godot course that's like super like intensive and like shows you just about everything you can do in Godot? Honestly, you get more bang for your buck just taking this online class and just following with it, and just as long as you have that real, like, perseverance and just, you know, gumption to really learn something on your own, and then that Godot course is, like, leagues ahead of what any kinda education you could get, like, in person. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's an amazing game. There's very few actual porn games out there that I can honestly I can't even count on my hand how many like actual good porn games there are. Like the go-to one everyone always brings up is like Honey Pot because that was like a mainstream back in the day a couple years
Hmm.
ago. But it's really I don't know if it's disheartening, but it's kind of sad seeing like the state of affairs with porn games just in general over the course of years because it's like there hasn't been a lot of new kind of like ground being made. It's always kind of been the same old hat. And honestly, that Five Nights at Fuzzboobs game is like it's leagues ahead of what anything else could possibly be, for a porn game. At least as far as like a porn parody or like, just a porn homage game, right?
Many a
It's
kiss
it's
does good work
way better.
in many a kiss does good work in like porn games. If you
Mhm.
ever have Vank on the show, he can tell you a lot more about that. He follows that guy's games really closely. He's a really I can send you maybe some pictures of his art in a second. He's a really good animator. I'm sure you've seen his stuff, but he started
Mhm.
doing games, um, and they're all like super well done. He gets like shitloads of artists to do like you know like background art and posters and unlockable stuff for him. So it is getting better. I think that you just don't. I think it's less that there's not a lot of good porn games, and more that they just kind of get overlooked because they're porn games. It just kind of
Yeah.
is how it is.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because it's like you can't if you're a content creator or just anything in general, unless you're in this weird niche like us where it's like, yeah, I don't
Mhm.
care about making porn. I'll post it on Twitter. It's like you don't really you don't really get to see all that stuff because it gets swept under the rug because why would fucking Pyrocynical or PewDiePie play a porn game
Mhm.
when it's like that's not how they're gonna make money.
Yeah.
They won't even make money. In fact, they might even get removed off of fucking Twitch and YouTube. It's like, yeah, no duh. Yeah, it's really hard because it's like I think it'll always be this way until like policies change, which I don't think they ever will, because that's just the nature of I don't know people being not prude but wanting to protect the youths from crazy things like drugs and porn and gambling. So it's just one of those things where I guess porn games or just like anything like that in general will always be kind of like not the mainstream ever, and you kinda have to go through these, like, niche rabbit holes, go
I
to
mean,
itch.io and be like,
I think it's
"Hey,
just
look,
because
here's something."
porn itself isn't mainstream. That's just what porn is.
Mhm. I mean, we could say porn's not mainstream, but let's be honest, everyone looks at porn.
What I mean is like individual porn like
Yeah.
videos and stuff. You're not walking down the street. Oh man, did you see fucking this girl's like newest thing? Oh yeah, I love that episode. That was epic. It's like
It's funny that yeah,
it is
it's
what it
funny
is.
it's funny you say that, Tom, because there was, like, a weird kind of, like, recent thing not recent, but, like, I think it mainly with, like, OnlyFans and stuff like that, where that started to become, like, weirdly mainstream, where it's like everyone was talking about, like, "Oh, did you hear this person has an OnlyFans now?" And it's like these people, like, made this weird, like, niche community of being, like, OnlyFans to these people,
Hmm.
and, like, we saw it with, like, content creators with, like, Markiplier and stuff where it wasn't necessarily 100% risque, but it was kind of blurring the lines in between there where it was like people were actually getting, like, hyped for, like, people making an OnlyFans, and then that kinda all died down once their, like, policies changed and they, were taking more revenue from OnlyFans.
It also died down when like it got flanderized. Like fucking Linus Tech Tips made a like OnlyFans, with just
Yeah.
him like in his merchandise.
Uh, oof. Yeah.
And then he fucking sold that company's like experimental product with no other prototypes.
Yeah, that is strange how that he that he goes and does that. You know, he has just random experimental shit that he just streams on YouTube, and he's like, "Yeah, we got this. Maybe we wrote an NDA for this or something, but who cares?"
I was just talking about, you remember like the controversy, right? Where like some company gave him a thing in the contract that what didn't belong to like Linus Tech Tips. It was just like a lend. But then it just
Oh,
kind of got lost in like their stock room, and then they went to a convention and like or some shit and sold it at auction. And like the company was like, "We need that back. Like you can't just fucking sell it off to some anonymous random person." Uh, and it was too late. It was just
mad
gone.
bookkeeping.
And
Damn.
you know what Linus's response to that was?
Whoopsie doodle.
We didn't sell it. We auctioned it.
Oh,
Nice, even better.
You fucking
yeah.
believe that?
I didn't sell the Mona Lisa. I auctioned it off to all these evil businessmen like Epstein. It's a different. It's so
Yeah,
different. You wouldn't understand. You're
different.
not a Hollywood elite. You wouldn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Uh, I think another thing I wanted to kind of bring up proteins. I don't know if you're okay talking about this, but what kind of was your fascination with Five Nights at Freddy's, or was it just like where did it kind of begin?
Oh, that's yeah. That's a yeah. So um the original Five Nights at Freddy's was 9 years old. We're in 2024, so what, 2013?
Mm-hmm.
Um so 2013 I was in junior high, and I was in junior high during 2013, and I, like many others, had a fascination with Markiplier because he was just a good YouTuber. He was funny, over the top. He was just what everyone watched at the time, just like PewDiePie, right?
Yeah.
So one day Markiplier is like, he uploads a video. It's titled like the scariest game ever made, and I'm like, hey, I like Markiplier. I like scary games. Let's take a look. And lo and behold, it's Five Nights at Freddy's, and he plays it. I'm like, hey, this is pretty fucking interesting. This It has a Chuck E. Cheese vibe to it. I'm gonna keep watching this, and it all went downhill from there.
Yeah.
Five Nights at Freddy's happens, then Five Nights at Freddy's 2, and I won't lie, this was also around the time where I found out what E621 is,
Ah, yeah.
and
Furry Awakening.
may,
when Mark
may have,
said, "We found out that Chica's a girly girl."
yeah,
Yeah.
and so when Five Nights at Freddy's 2 came out, I won't lie, I'm a little ashamed of it, but I did type in Toy Chica into that E621 search bar, and the rest is history, honestly. Fun fact, actually, my my homoerotic awakening also came from Five Nights at Freddy's, and I can actually tell you in exact detail how that occurred. It's quite
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah. Go
So
for it.
what occurred was Five Nights at Freddy's 2 had come out, and everyone was having a date. The debate is Toy Bonnie a boy or a girl? We know now that Toy Bonnie is a boy, but everyone was like, "Hey, Toy Bonnie is a girl." No, Toy Bonnie is a boy. And so, no one really knew, and Scott Cawthon never really said anything about it. And so, one day, I was looking at the Five Nights at Freddy's tag, and I saw an image of Toy Bonnie. Let me actually see if I can find it right now. I know I can't show it because this is going onto YouTube, but let me
Yeah,
see if
we'll
I can
have
at
a
least find the image.
Patreon. Whoever fucking subscribes to a Patreon for this smut could look at it. We'll say that.
Here,
Or you
I
could
actually
put
know
like,
the
if it's
artist
not too
too.
bad, you could put like a censored version up on screen.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
This is technically the art, and it's not safe for work. So I'm just gonna post this into this chat. But I'm gonna post this in stream chat here. So I saw this specifically. This is the exact image that I saw and I was like, I don't know if this is a boy or a girl. So I saw this image and I said, I don't know what gender this is. I'm gonna check the artist's tag and see. So I did, and this is the image they had posted prior. And so I said, oh, hey, this is a girl then. That easily, this is a woman. Turns out it is not a woman.
Only women can suck
Um,
cock.
yeah, I was lied to. And
Yeah,
so
as
because of the
as we all
fact
are.
that what's it called? Because of the fact that this kind of occurred, the correlation between like woman and man kind of broke internally for me. And so ever since then I kind of just like look at men and women in the same light, which would be
And Chuck E.
sexually.
Cheese. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was literally this person. They also made a remaster of that later on, which was this one. And yeah, that's it's quite literally that simple. It was all Toy Bonnie's fault.
You
Hot
should
dog.
you should
Actually,
contact that artist and tell them that they turned you gay.
so I actually befriended this artist.
Oh, okay.
Oh shit.
Yeah, years down, not years down the line, but like I want to say 1 or 2 years down the line, by complete chance, I had met this artist's boyfriend, and we hit it off. Me and his boyfriend were friends, but I didn't know that his boyfriend was this artist, right? I wasn't aware of that at the time. And so he's like, "Oh, hey, I want you to meet some of my friends and my boyfriend." I'm like, "Sure." And lo and behold, guess who? It's him. And
Damn.
so I meet the artist, and about a year later, we also have hit it off. Me and him are good friends, and I tell him like, "Hey, like you're the reason that I'm like the way I am, right?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" I explained the situation to him, and he's like, "That's fucking hilarious." So this one person single-handedly did this to me. I know exactly why. I know exactly how. I know the person. I know the art that it stemmed from. I know my origin story. Um, so yeah, just kind of that kind of occurred. I don't speak with that person anymore. Um, but I did for a couple years, and I thought it was pretty funny. So,
Yeah.
but yeah. So it's all because of this guy and Scott Cawthon, technically. Scott Cawthon's fault and this artist's fault. These two are to blame. And I guess you could also blame Five Nights at Freddy's as like a franchise.
Yeah, it's like an
So
entity.
yeah, as like an entity. It's all FNAF's fault. Um so yeah, that's pretty funny in my opinion.
Yeah, that's why our economy inflated. It's because of Five Nights at Freddy's. I like to say that a lot. But yeah, it's fascinating how that always happens, right? Like this happens like a lot, just like in general. Like I don't know if we've mentioned this, Tom, on the podcast, where it's like you have it's like this cyclical cycle. It's like a snake eating its own tail, where you have an artist who eh, gets inspired, let's say, by another artist, and and they get inspired by that artist, and so you have this weird cycle of just like, yeah, this guy who draw like made Marion weird, like as a kind of furry character because that was what the Disney movie wanted at the time, and then you have a kid who watches that movie is like, wow, Maid Marian was fucking hot, and then they draw art, and then it's this trickle down effect of like that another kid being like, wow, they drew Maid Marian hot, or they drew their OC so hot like Maid Marian, and then it just kind of gets lost in the sauce where the originator became, but it's always that same kind of thing where it's like these people get good at art because they see someone in the industry like really good at art, and then they become the industry because that's always how it goes because you always need new blood.
Yeah, I was
And
talking
then
about this earlier, but that's what happened to me with a couple of artists like Doxy and Maniacus. I when I was younger, I was just like I was like looking around for like porn comics, and there's just a couple of artists I came across where I like latched onto them really hard, like Doxy. Doxy was the main one by far, and I would just try to emulate their style over and over and over and over again. And like if you look at a lot of people say my art style is very similar to Gurren Lagann and like Trigger in general, but if you go and look at my art and then you side by side it with Doxy, I feel like you'd be like, oh, okay, I get it. Like it's just very clear
mhm.
because the way I like make my shapes very obvious, like the way I sketched out the character, they do the same thing. You can like see exactly how they built the character up, like where like the construction lines were and everything. It's that's how it is for everything. It's like everything's derivative. Everyone learned from somewhere. Not like people will spend fucking so long worrying about making sure they're being original, and it's like it doesn't matter. Originality doesn't matter. Creativity and fucking what's the word? Perseverance is what matters.
Yeah,
It's
be
kind of
able to
like
produce something.
it's kind of like he who shall not be named, who used to be on this server. He would like come in and post a drawing and say, "Does this look creative?" And it's like, "What the fuck does that mean? What do you mean? Does it look creative? That's not something
Yeah.
doesn't look creative. You either were or weren't creative when you made it. It's not
Yeah,
like
did you trace
an
over an
aesthetic.
image? Then probably not, right? Like, there's really no definition for what is creative. It's like fluff material, right? It's like anything in the industry where it's like you say, this is things warm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's meaning behind what someone says when someone says something like that, but you going out of your way to be like, I don't know anything. I don't know if this is creative. I don't know if this is like
Yeah.
warm lighting. It's like, well, learn, figure it out. That's what everyone's been doing. We've been just figuring out
Mm-hmm.
what the nonsense words mean, at least to us. Like that's what I think is important is you understand what these like nonsense industry terms mean to you and then implement them in the way you find
Yeah.
is correct.
I mean, that's the thing with a lot of those kinds of industry, like not even industry, but like just art words. Like this looks warm, or this comes up with me giving like advice a lot. Something will look stiff. It's like, well, what does stiff mean? It's a still image. How could it look like not fluid if it's not fluid? It doesn't move, and it's like it's just something you build an intuition for. You just kind of you know it when you see it. It's the duck test. It's like it's hard to lay out. This is the rules for stiffness or fluidity. It's just you work at it for a long time, and then you're like one day you're just like, oh yeah, I can see that now. I can just like look at a picture and be like, that looks weird, and that one doesn't.
To be fair, Tom, you did draw a 2x4 and you're like, this looks stiff, and it's like, well, you know, kind of obvious,
Is
but
that
yeah.
is that real, or are you doing a bit?
But no, that was real. In July 24th, 2525, the year of our future Lord, there's gonna be a new one. You drew a 2x4 and you were like, this looks stiff. And everyone face palmed in the Discord like at the same time to the point where it made like
Yeah,
a small, minute waveform like outside of space time.
it showed like a couple people face palm, then even more people face palm, then a whole city street face palm with
Yeah,
that like
all of
that
New York
meme.
face palm. Yeah, it
How
was
So
many
you
it
don't
was
know the
different
actual
frightening.
movie it's from.
It's from Death of a Salesman.
No,
Watch
it's
that
not. You
movie.
fucking liar.
No, because the audiences were the ones face palming when they saw that movie. It's one of those cool bits where it's like it zooms out and it's like
Oh my
you're not
god.
watching the movie, they're watching the movie. It's like SpongeBob the movie where the pirates are watching the SpongeBob
The
movie,
idea
you're
of Death of
not.
a
You're watching
Salesman,
the
that's the reaction.
yeah, everybody knows that,
What a
Tom. It's like
fucking idiot.
SpongeBob movie. Yeah,
what a stinky poopy.
but yeah,
Yeah, when they were watching
well,
Death of a Salesman and everyone ran out of the theater because they thought the salesman was going to hit them.
yeah, yeah. It's like that fucking. Shut up, Tom. Yeah, the dead salesman ran at them like Sonic straight to their screen, and they bolted. They
Like
ran
when
out of the
Kara.
theater. Yeah, I hate it when media does that. It always scares me. Much like
Mhm.
Five Nights at Freddy's, to bring it back
Yeah.
around when the
Five
little
Yeah,
Nights at
let's
characters
get
jump
back
out
on
on
topic.
screen. Yeah, well, it's true, Tom. When the characters jump out on screen, I bolt. Much
It's
like the
true.
first
If
fucking
you show,
train movie.
unironically, if you put one of those people who like ran away from the like train arriving video in front of a computer, you just teleported them into the future, put them in front of a computer, and played Five Nights at Freddy's. Even if they weren't playing it, if it was like you just sat them in front of like a Markiplier video, I think that they would die, like at the
They'd be
first jump
confused by
scare.
the little man's like hanging up on that screen. Like, did they build that whole stage so that you could look in that little box? Like, they wouldn't understand that.
How have you imprisoned this small man in the screen?
What's this Charlie Chaplin man? he's a lot buffer than the original chap. Like, that's all they would say. And then they'd get a heart attack looking at Five Nights at Fuzzboob's tits flopping out
You
when they
know,
get
what
scared.
would happen is they wouldn't get it would get so horny that all the blood would flow into their cock and they would die instantly.
Yeah. That's why,
It's too much
yeah,
for
that's why
them.
they get too much sexy good times. The human
Hmm.
brain was not made for Five Nights at Fuzzboobs until this year,
Yeah.
Hmm.
2013, 14, 15, 16. That's when the kids really got creative and they evolved. They can play Fortnite now.
And
Yeah,
drink the cola.
and drink.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's so true. And drink the cola.
Well, I guess, to get back on topic, like we have been, Tom, because 'cause I'm a good
Hmm.
host, proteins, what kind of creative endeavors have you been getting up to? I know, you were messing around with 3D modeling back when I was talking with you.
Oh yeah. So lately, like my really only creative output has kind of just been playing video games. However, I am working with a friend and known modeler, Space Baron. They made Five Nights at Freddy's models, which was how I originally met them. I actually met them on Tumblr first. Tumblr died, and they went over to Twitter. So did I. And I don't remember exactly how I met them. However, I did. And we hit it off. We became friends, and he still is in the modeling business. He makes models for money, as most people do. And yeah, he just kind of like makes them, and I give my creative input really. For example, let me go ahead and go to his gum tree here. So I'm not exactly sure um, how it happened, but I believe he just started streaming him modeling on stream one day in Discord chat, and I was like, "Hey, that's cool. I'm gonna watch him do that." And I would give creative input, and things kind of went on from there. And well, we became friends, and he did it more frequently. And eventually, what's it called, we just kind of started like making models together. So let me go ahead and look at his older ones. So he has a withered foxy. I didn't do anything for that. Chica, plush trap, Nightmarion, those I had no input on. Boy, Bonnie, I also wasn't really there for that one. The very first one that I gave like a serious amount of like actual like creative input, and I was like there for like 90% of the process, was probably going to be Withered Freddy, I would say. Withered Freddy was the first model that we like truly made together. It's this motherfucker right here. Um, and I think we nailed it. I think as a starting point, he was really good. He was just a model that we both did together, and it kind of came out well, and it's actually pretty popular. I want to say that this Withered Freddy is the single-handedly the most popular Withered Freddy model in current existence, primarily because it's the only one that's a male. It's the only one that's Withered Freddy, and for whatever reason, a lot of people really like Withered Freddy. Specifically, there's this one artist. They're a Twitter artist. Their name is Poison Gal. I've spoken with them a handful of times, and they personally are very much so into Five Nights at Freddy's media, just like I am. However, they're also more so into the older models, such as the Withereds, such as Withered Bonnie, Freddy, Withered Foxy, Withered Chica, etc., etc. And so for them, one of their favorites are Chicas, such as Withered Chica, and they have both drawn and commissioned other people to use both Withered Freddy and Withered Chica from Space Baron himself, um, having sex on numerous different occasions. Um, and they've also drawn it themselves using either their own design or the designs of Space Baron. So that's pretty impressive, I will say.
Mhm.
To have so much fan art of the same, character made by partially by me and Spaceburn is really, really impressive, honestly. I think it's very flattering, I would say, because that's what it was meant to be used for. It was meant to be used to be made in pornography, and that's what happened. And I think that's great. You know, I
Mhm.
think it's really swell. Same thing with Withered Bonnie. So Withered Bonnie, he made a Withered Bonnie model a handful of years back, and it is single-handedly also the only and and the most popular Withered Bonnie model that is used to this day, simply because he just made it so well. Sadly, I didn't have any input on that one. That one was he created on his own, so I didn't do anything with that one, but I wish I did, just because it's a very nice model. Here's an example, by the way, of some of the artwork they've drawn. Poison Gal, that withered Freddy in the center is the design of Spacefaring. And then I believe the withered Chica behind him, smothering him in her tits, that is also the design of Spacefaring. The other two are two different designs made by two unrelated artists. The one that's writing him is Poison Gals, and the one to the left is some other artist that I don't know of.
Hmm.
And they've commissioned 3D artwork of this withered Freddy and withered Chica as well. Let me go ahead and see if I can find that somewhere. But they're quite popular, not only with this one specific artist, but with other artists as well. Whenever someone uses a Withered Freddy, they use, our Withered Freddy, right? Whenever someone uses a Withered Chica, 8 times out of 10, they use our Withered Chica. Here's those two in action, for example. Both of those were made by Space Baron. Um, so yeah, they're quite popular. Honestly, I think we did really great with Withered Freddy. Um, we gave him a fat cock, we gave him a cock ring, we gave him a horse cock alt. We really put all the bells and whistles on him, and I think he looks great. Um, then the one after that was, who did we do after Withered Freddy? There was Nightmare Bonnie. I wasn't there for that one. Nightmare Bonnie was a bit in terms of these models, some of them are deemed successes, some of them are deemed failures. Withered Freddy is a massive success. He is like easily one of the most widely accepted models. Withered Chica as well, Withered Foxy as well. Those three are all been successes. Withered Bonnie, I want to say, is the biggest success. When people use Withered Bonnie, they use this one. It's like without a doubt. Withered Bonnie, if you see one in source filmmaker pornography, and Blender sometimes. It's 9 times out of 10. It's going to be Space Barons. Um, but yeah, all the Wizards were a massive success. Toy Bonnie was a bit of a failure. Nightmare Bonnie, I wasn't really involved too much in her creation. She was a bit of a failure. Didn't really get all that popular. She has a couple fan made renders, but that's how you really dictate how good a model is if other people like it. Because yeah,
Mhm.
you can make 10 renders of it yourself, but you made those. That's not what the public created. You need to look at what the public made. Toy Freddy was made a female. Um, I also wasn't too involved with her. She was also a bit of a failure. Then there's Funtime Freddy Plus, which I single-handedly think is the peak of Space Baron's models. Like single-handedly, I think that like Funtime Freddy Plus and Bonbon, it has Bonbon as well, is easily the best model that we've made. And I actually was on this project as well for Funtime Freddy Plus. Um, and I'll just post him here. I hands down believe that he is the best model just so far in terms of what's it called of and I guess comparing them to all the others. He also took us the longest. I think we worked on him for about like 2 months straight. We were getting all the wires done. We were getting Bonbon. We got Funtime Freddy Plus himself. As you can see, Funtime Freddy Plus does not look like Funtime Freddy. completely, and that's because we decided to mix Funtime Freddy with Ennard, simply because Ennard looks like really fucking ugly, and we don't like Ennard, and
Mhm.
so technically you could say this is Molten Freddy, but it's not. But it's essentially Molten Freddy, but better in every single conceivable way. Um, and then there's also Bon Bon, which I think is really funny. And yeah, I think that this is like easily the best model that we've made. I was on this one like for 95% of its development. I think I just wasn't there for like the rigging, but the rigging is like, I mean, there's not really anything I can say about that part. Um, and sadly, I do want to say that FF Plus was a bit of a failure. He was used in only about two fan renders, and that was it. So that really sucks. I think he looks really good. Definitely one of the no, not one of it. Definitely is like the best model that we were able to make. And I guess the public did not agree with us. Withered Bonnie was next. Like I said, he was a massive success, probably the biggest success. But I didn't have anything to do with that. He made a nightmare model, which is relatively okay. It could be, touched up a bit, but also a bit of a failure, not too popular. He made a mangle. This mangle is also rather popular. A lot of people use it. Some people have like redesigned it and whatnot. The mangle is a pretty good one. And then the last one that was no, not the last one. Then there was Toy Chica. Toy Chica was not. I was not involved with Toy Chica, and she was a bit of a failure as well, sadly. Then the last one that we've publicized is Vanny, not an animatronic, just human in a costume, and she's doing okay-ish, borderline failure, sadly. But also we took about a month to work on her. Reason being though was just because I got a job, so I was not there as frequently. Because Space Baron doesn't work on his models too much unless I'm around, just so like we can actually work together on them. Vanny just took so long simply because I wasn't around as much, and she was a bit of a failure. But she's not bad. I definitely think she's good. She just hasn't fucking, I guess she just hasn't hit the target audience, I suppose. But I definitely think she was fantastic.
Mhm.
I put a lot of ideas into her, and I think they came out pretty well. It's just that the public doesn't really care, I suppose. Plus, she has competition with the other Vanny model, which is extremely popular. Like it's used very often, especially with SFM Nations, which is one of the highest rated fnaf SFMers at the exact moment. They're very popular. Everyone knows who they are if you're, in the fnaf SFM community. And that model, the JNator one, is currently the most popular, and so she's the competition, and she's great. She's a great model, not perfect, but very, very well done. And yeah, I mean, she's kind of been the gold standard for Vanny. So yeah, um, sadly, this our Vanny did not hit that gold standard according to the public. And
Mhm.
then lastly, we're actually currently in the process of remaking Withered Bonnie. Um, just a complete redo, from the ground up. Just making him all over again. We're gonna change him, see if we can get him to be better than the original. Because we desperately want him to be. The original is great, but this is the very first remake ever. That's the original right there. That's not the remake. And we really, really want to, like, we're putting a lot more ideas into him. We're changing some things up, so we're really hoping that the public decides that the remake's good, because we already know that this guy was a massive success. So we're really praying that the new version is also a massive success.
Mhm.
You want to hit gold twice. And so that's what I've been doing lately, just modeling shenanigans. But besides that, I mean, I've just been working. I don't really have time to do any of my own things. I would use these models, but like half of them are in Blender, and I don't really have the time to sit down and learn how to use Blender. So, I
Is
mean,
it
if I did have more time, I probably could, but for the most part, I only really use the ones that are in Source Filmmaker, and that's I believe most of the Withered Foxy, Chica, Withered Bonnie, Withered Freddy is not in Source Filmmaker, but the ones that are, I can use those. Speaking of which, I did render them a couple of times. Withered Bonnie specifically, I actually made something for Tommy about a year ago of Withered Bonnie, and I think that was pretty funny. He does not remember it.
well, Tom gets sent so much fan art.
Yeah, I suppose so. But this is also my greatest accomplishment. I made this render right here with Roxy and Withered Bonnie in this server. I streamed the entire thing. It took about like 2 hours because I was just messing around for half the time. And I made this in server. Vank was there, and I posted this to my Fur Affinity, and it is the best rated thing that I have on FA right now. Let me go see.
Hell yeah.
How, Let me go see how popular it became. It has 617 views, 13 favorites, and 2 comments. And I believe one of those comments is no, neither of those comments are mine. It actually got so popular that someone posted it to Rule 34. And that someone was not me. Yeah, it wasn't me who
Mhm,
posted it there. But that made me pretty happy. I was like, hell yeah, I got posted onto fucking Rule 34. They tagged it and everything.
mhm.
Yeah, I got an artist tag. They tagged it with proteins, man. It's my only post on Rule 34 because I don't have anything on. I don't
First
have
of
anything
many,
else that's
first
been
of
posted
many.
there. Then I also made this. This was like a test render, which was also really like popular for some reason.
Yep.
It's just a withered body in the spawn room of from Team Fortress 2. And for some reason, him pointing at his penis got 21 favorites, 3 comments, and 247 views.
I'm telling
No
you,
upload to Rule 34 though.
you gotta
But
keep at it, you get mega popular. People go crazy.
yeah, this was also during my whole withered Bonnie arc where I was just kind of doing anything to get some withered Bonnie pornography going. This is the thing I made for Tommy here. It's just withered Bonnie laying in bed, browsing Twitter with his penis out. Pretty funny, I would assume.
Oh yeah,
Mhm,
that was what the
mhm.
prompt was. They told you to draw Withered Bonnie with his cock out, what like browsing Twitter.
Yeah, and there he is with his cock out, browsing Twitter. It's not very apparent that he's browsing Twitter, but that's what he's doing, trust me.
I really like how
Source.
massive his phone is,
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially considering how
yeah,
massive he is.
and
yeah.
his cock is, yeah.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. His penis is larger than his phone.
He has the Shaq phone.
Yeah, for sure. So I did all this shit and I got some pretty okay notoriety. I did want to become like the withered Monty guy, and I definitely did for a bit, but I just stopped kind of making renders because I just ran out of ideas and I didn't really know what to do, so I just stopped. I made a couple renders, like him showing off his ass, him in the pool, stuff like that. But I mean, I want to say that one render with him and Roxy, that is my peak, and that will forever be
No,
my
it's the
peak. And
beginning, it's the beginning proteins of your successful career.
oh yeah, you're right. I mean, I
You're
could. I
missing
am
some cues
planning
here.
on actually remaking it. The
Mhm.
only issue is that I'm waiting for Withered Bonnie version 2 to come out. Once we've made, version 2, then I'll remake it. And it'll be like even better because I'll have a new Withered Bonnie, and then I'll have a bit more expertise with Source Filmmaker. So
I'm telling you, proteins, you gotta get on that Blender train. It's much like programming where got a huge steep curve when learning it, but I think it's always worth it in the long run.
yeah, you're probably right. But fuck that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Based.
if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just keep
Yeah.
on doing what you're doing. If you get even more popular, it's like whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I got me my source film maker, and yeah, we're gonna get some Withered Bonnie going,
I can't wait.
Jeff.
I can't wait for the day when you make source filmmaker films and it's just fucking it's just nice. It's just fucking they're fucking all night long. You know what I'm saying? It's just it's that good shit. I know
Yeah,
you can get
yeah,
there.
it's gonna be like a 10-hour animation of Withered Bonnie and several other people bottoming for Withered
There's
Bonnie.
only like 5 loops.
Yeah,
And they just repeat.
but each loop is 2 hours long.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Rendered
exactly.
nice. Rendered nice
default
and long.
default wet
Hmm.
meat sound.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
It'll be
And then at
auto-tuned
the
up.
very end, he comes, but instead of like normal jizz sounds, it's just like the TF2 rocket explosion.
Yeah. Mechanized cum. You'll love to
Yeah,
see it.
exactly, exactly.
Mhm. I this is something I kind of, it was happened a little while back in the conversation that I kinda wanted to bring up. You brought up, kind of like how a lot of your inspirations in the FNAF community, or just in general, it kind of started with, like, the original, casting crew, like, the 1st and 2nd games, and we've been, lucky enough to kind of, like, see this franchise, I guess, like, blossom into this, I guess, interesting amalgamation of, like, the original creations now being created by fans and them being, like, a part of, like, the main thing. Like, with Security Breach is, like, a clear-cut example of, you know, Scott Cawthon had the idea, but really the game Security Breach with all of the designs and stuff came from fans, working on that game because they wanna be a part of that franchise now, and we don't really see that happening a whole lot, I guess, like, so upfront, especially with the internet, like, you know for a fact, like, people who watch Disney movies are probably working at Disney to some extent because they just love Disney so much or they wanted to animate for Disney. Same thing with, like, cartoons or, like, Cartoon Network where it's like they watched, something or other on Cartoon Network, and now that they went to Cal Arts, and now they're fucking storyboarding for Steven Universe or something like that, right? Um, though I will say this much, with Five Nights at Freddy's, it very much feels like the only other, I guess, video game franchise that comes close to this amount of not only fandom, but, like, recreation of the original source material is something like, Undertale, which
Mm-hmm.
Tom is very much a fan of
Yep.
and has been elaborating and telling me a bunch of cool stuff, and in this podcast, we've talked about it, we've mentioned some cool fan stuff, in this podcast as well, and, um, it's fascinating seeing the parallels in this, and I guess the roundabout kind of, conclusion I'm making with this is, proteins, do you feel like, it's not a bad thing, obviously, but do you feel like you're kind of in this just group in the FNAF community where you want to see, like, like, Scott Cawthon's original, like, outset, like, his original outlook, or are you more I guess, are you more fan oriented? I'm just curious about that, really.
I understand what you mean. Most definitely, I do prefer Scott's original vision for the franchise. I do believe that the true ending of Five Nights at Freddy's is Ultimate Custom Night. Not Ultimate Custom Night. Well, I guess yeah, Ultimate Custom Night is the true ending. But I mean Pizzeria Simulator. Everyone's gathered into all the remaining animatronics are gathered to one place and they're all burned alive. Henry kills himself, the player dies, that's it. The end. William Afton goes to hell, right?
Mhm.
I'm not too big. I'm not too keen on what the fandom has done to Five Nights at Freddy's, especially with something like Security Breach. Security Breach is a pretty bad game. It's not good. The lore implications of it are not great. The character designs are, they're definitely good, but they're not Five Nights at Freddy's. They
Mm,
tried with like the ruined animatronics and the shattered animatronics. They tried with like making the animatronics dirty, but they're just not scary. None of the animatronics are scary from Security Breach, not even from Ruin. Not a single one of the animatronics is scary. The soundtrack doesn't give you a sense of dread. There is no missing children. Well, there is missing children, but there's no names for the missing children. There's no more spirits. There's no remnant. Everything that made Five Nights at Freddy's does not exist in Security Breach. And I think that's what's wrong with the newer Five Nights at Freddy's, because it's not Five Nights at Freddy's, it's it's just Five Nights at unknown location.
Mhm.
Like I wouldn't be surprised if the new Five Nights at Freddy's didn't even have a Freddy. If Glamrock Freddy wasn't in the game, I wouldn't. It wouldn't really make a difference. Like the game would be the exact same, whether or not the main protagonist that's not Gregory was Freddy or not. Just because it's so far beyond what Five Nights at Freddy's originally was. And I don't think that the turn was made strictly from Security Breach. It most definitely was a gradual thing.
Yeah, I was gonna
Um,
mention like I think that sister location is when the aesthetic change started, not security
Most
breach.
definitely, yes.
Like
Mhm.
Sister
suddenly they're all
Location,
like they're made of like 40 different panels that all unfold like a fucking demon. And it's like this is not
right.
Yeah,
an
They've
it's the
animatronic.
turned
Unreal
into
effect, right?
they've
Where it's
turned
like
into Pinhead.
yeah, it's like the original kind of design gets lost in the mud when someone's like, "Well, this guy made Zelda in Unreal Engine. It looks so good and realistic." And it's like, "Well, that's not really the point of Zelda, right?"
Mhm.
Also, it
It
just
has a
looks the
clear
same, but with like fucking
yeah,
like RTX shaders on it.
yeah.
Yeah. So personally, Sister Location is like where the turn happened. However, Sister Location isn't a bad game. Sister Location is an incredible game. In fact, it's a really good game. People don't like it, but I do. It has a lot of good lore implications. It has a lot of good story to it. It has a definitive ending, unlike every other FNAF game. Well, except for like one or two. It has a definitive ending. You die, the baby takes over your body and she runs away, and then you come back to life. It is a definitive ending. It's conclusive. It tells you what happens. It's one of the few FNAF games that actually explains to you, hey, this is exactly what happens. There's no there's no missing pieces. Here is the puzzle. We're gonna let you complete it. Right? I'd say it's one of the best FNAF games. It doesn't do anything wrong. It just has very weird aesthetics, such as the
Mhm.
faceplates and whatnot. However, it still does have the original ambiance. It still makes you feel helpless. It still makes you feel creeped out when shit happens. When you're crawling through the vents and you hear motion trigger, circus gallery, and you're not in the circus gallery, that scares the shit out of you. Why is something triggering in the circus gallery when I'm in Bellora's room? That doesn't make sense. That spooks the shit out of me. It has everything other than the animatronics designs. Everything about it, the office, the way you move about things, the conveyor belts, they all suit the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, minus the animatronics themselves. And it's one of the better games in my opinion. And yeah, it is where the aesthetics start changing, but it's not where it's not the ambience, it's not the atmosphere aesthetics. It's where the animatronic aesthetics started changing.
Mhm.
Then from other games, the other things start changing. Security Breach, they don't have creepy ambience. They don't have creepy music. It doesn't have creepy animatronics. It doesn't have good jump scares. It doesn't have good regular scares. There's nothing about it that's good because of the original Five Nights at Freddy's. The game is creepy on its own. Even without the jump scares, it's still just a scary game. Same thing with Sister Location. It's a scary game, even without the jump scares. It still spooks you, you know, as opposed to Security Breach, where nothing is scary. Everything is so brightly lit up with the neon lights and it is dark, but everything is lit. Everything is lit but dark. They give you a flashlight. It's a free roam game. You're never in like any danger if you just stay still. If you stay still, nothing can happen to you. If you stay still in any of the other Five Nights at Freddy's games, you die. So it's very obvious that like a lot of what made Five Nights at Freddy's was very much so lost in translation. The cameras don't do anything. There's only like 5 sections with doors, and the doors are like mandatory. But they're not implemented in a good way. There's no power system, which is fine. Power hasn't been a thing since Five Nights at Freddy's like 1 and 2, so there's no problem with there not being a power system. But there's just nothing that makes you scared of Five Nights at Freddy's from like the first 5 games translated over to Security Breach. And then Ruin came out, and Ruin brought back some of the ambiance. It is creepy. There is shit rattling in the background while you're walking around, but there's still nothing happens in the game. Nothing happens lore wise, nothing happens to progress the story, nothing happens, just period. It's just a game that exists. Ruin was a standalone game, and so was Security Breach that had nothing to do with Five Nights at Freddy's, it would honestly be perfectly fine as a fan game. It's that separated from the main story. And then them trying and failing to bring back William Afton it was just cringe. For lack of a better term, it was just cringe. There was just, and now it's the mimic, and it's like, oh great, so this character from the book series that no one reads is now supposed to be the most important character and antagonist in the plot. Like, no, it doesn't add up. Security Breach was a bad game. Ruin was a good game, or it was a better game, not a good game. And it honestly ruined the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise. I'm really glad that Help Wanted 2 came out because it really did help, but the franchise has been ruined. We need another game made by Scott himself,
Hmm.
but that's not going to happen because he's retired. So I'm not really hopeful for the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise,
To be
which is why
honest,
I focus so much on the older Five Nights at Freddy's series as opposed to the newer one.
I was just gonna say, to be honest, I wouldn't completely give up hope because it seems like a common thing with creatives these days that retiring doesn't really mean retiring. It just means they start working on their own terms. Like how PewDiePie
Well,
has been retired for like 4 years or something, but he just keeps putting out videos as normal.
Well, the thing is that Scott's like he's always put out his own games. Every game that he made himself without the help of Steelwool was made by him.
Yeah,
He's
but
always been on his own.
I guess what I mean is like, whereas before there would have been, thought about can would this be profitable? What can I do with this in terms of that? Now it's like you can have pure creative freedom because you're a multimillionaire and you don't need to care anymore.
But
Hmm.
he always had pure creative freedom.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying if you're not like when money is involved, you're intrinsically going to like operate slightly differently. That's why a lot of people say like I'm retired now. I'm just gonna keep doing the same thing, but I'm retired. It's just a mental thing. But
I
who knows if he's gonna do anything?
I don't know. Who knows? His last game was I don't remember what his last game was, but yeah, I definitely do. I'm not too hopeful on the future of Five Nights at Freddy's, but if Scott Cawthon does make a return, that'd be great. Unlikely, but if he did, that'd be honestly phenomenal. Then there was the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. It was
Yeah,
okay.
that's a whole other can of worms that
It
Tom doesn't like me to talk about.
Yeah, it was okay. There's not too much to say or speculate about it. It's the same story, just rewritten, and it certainly is something. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I think a real kind of cap off, or I guess just like an overall, I think or I guess just the main thing in general is we're at this kind of period in time where we're seeing the things that we grew up with now transitioning into the hands of people who also grew up with it. And that comes with a lot of weird kind of caveats where it's like not necessarily the people who were fans will know what to do with the things that they like and can in fact sometimes ruin them or twist them in some weird kind of archaic way. It's like this monkey paw scenario where it's like you wish upon a star you could work on like a Star Wars movie, but the Star Wars movie you work on is like the worst one because you were a fan and you corrupted it because
Hmm.
you were just, like, not even too passionate, it's like it's just this weird thing where it's like you wanted to be you in the movie, right? It's not that you wanted to make a Five Nights at Freddy's game, it's that you wanted to make something better than Five Nights at
I
Freddy's, you wanted to be more than the
I think
franchise.
that I can talk on this phenomenon pretty well because of my experience with Undertale. Actually, it's
Mhm.
more like when you're a really big fan of something, you get really deep in the weeds on it, and you. I don't want to say you lose sight of what makes it good because you still like it for what makes it good, but you lose the ability to articulate that and point it out and be like, you know, oh yeah, I can tell that this was done because it's. I think a miniature version of that a lot of people can relate to is like if a character's name is a pun, the first time you ever see that character, you go, ah ha ha, that's funny, their name is a pun. But then, like, if you still like that franchise and have followed it for like 5 years, and you see someone else point it out that it's a pun, you go, oh yeah, it is a pun. I forgot about that because you just got used to it. Um,
Mhm.
and in like Undertale in particular, the thing you have to be really careful with is like getting too deep in the weeds on what like fanon, like fan canon, where it's like, wait a minute, the way I'm writing this character is this how this character actually is in the games, or is this like how like comic artists have interpreted them, and now I'm like kind of losing the plot because I'm not making the original character, I'm making like a flanderization of a flanderization of the original character. It's I'll say it's something that Glitchdale does very poorly, and Undertale Yellow does incredibly well. If you want to look at like really good examples of things that are able to really step back and take a breather and be like, let me look at this from the perspective of someone who's never played, who has never interacted with this fandom, doesn't know the theories, doesn't know what like Gaster is. Like this is just me being like, what were these characters like in the original? What was the vibe of the original? How can I replicate that in my like fan project? Whereas Glitch is more like, and this isn't even necessarily bad. It just depends on the content and the intentions. Glitch is just unabashedly like, I don't give a shit. I'm turning it into anime. I'm gonna make a bunch
Mhm.
of weird OCs and like have Sans get killed by an ancient god. It's that's what I think a big part of it is. Once you've been in something for too long, it's not like the difference is you're saying like they want to make it but better. I'm saying it's more like they want to make it good in the way that it always was, but they're too deep in the weeds. They can't see the picture from the frame. And it's really hard to get out of that mindset when you've been like following something for 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, it's fascinating because like I think there's definitely a lot of examples we could use to like compare like apples to oranges, but I think a really good one is like the comic book industry, right? Because that's a pretty like set in stone one where we can like definitively say like, oh yeah, that was the golden year, that was the like the silver year, and this is kind of where it fell off, but this is where it comes back. And the reason those like kind of ebbs and flows happen isn't necessarily because the original creator just stopped writing bad or started like doing weird shit. It's because the actual concepts, the actual like characters like Doctor Strange gets transferred over to a new writer that then has to like either make a whole new series out of this like one concept character, and they have to it's the same thing with like Spider-Man too, where it's like it's ridiculous, especially with Spider-Man in the like, the movie sense, because that one character has had so many, like, reboots to the point where in the new Spider-Man movies, they make a joke about it because they have them introduced, like,
It's
in
not
like,
even a
interacting
joke.
with each
It's
other.
it's it's not even a joke. It's a central plot point.
Yeah, it becomes canon because that's another thing, like,
Which
Into the Spider-Verse is, like, canon based on the idea of how it's weirdly meta how much it kind of, like, is so self-referential about the concept of, like, the comic book industry needing to change hands so many times with creatives, simply because of the fact that people die or people just
mhm.
don't
People
Mhm.
get
die,
the
people
opportunity to work on
retire,
the thing they want. Yeah,
people
or they
just
just retire.
or they get worse. Like I mean that can
Mhm.
happen to an original creator too. They get too in the weeds on their own creation and start like writing characters in weird ways and flanderizing themselves. Flanderization
Yeah.
is the perfect word for it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's fascinating, the amount of, like, industries we can really compare it to, but I think the more interesting thing is with specifically video games, we don't see this a whole lot. Um, the only real times that we see, like, IPs change hand is when, like, big companies, like, transfer them over to other ones where it's like, "Yeah, I guess this guy got absorbed by EA, I guess this franchise belongs to EA now," and then it's like, either the studio goes with EA or EA cuts them off at the fucking hip, and it's like, "No, we're not making your fucking video game, whatever. Who gives a shit? We don't care anymore." And then that whole entire franchise gets thrown to the wayside. Um, the video game industry as like as a whole has been this very weird kind of like dogmatic like butcher shop where like companies get absorbed and like ideas and IPs get like tossed to the wayside like fat, and the only ones that stay are the ones where they know they have staying power, like Fallout, for instance, right? Or just it's not, like, baffling, but it's a whole other, like, industry that's evolved and is operating on a whole different spectrum, and then, the juxtaposition between, like, indie games and, like, these AAA games where it's like, for instance, like, I grew up with Ratchet& and Clank, I love the first 3 games, they were all made by Insomniac, and then it's like it's now the original team for the Ratchet& and Clank games after, like, the first 3 games has, like, either dwindled down or it's not even, like, the full cast and crew, and the only people you really see kind of back in their original spots are, like, the voice actors, maybe, like and that's a big maybe because, like, that shit happens all the times where voice actors
Mhm.
just get replaced, and you
Especially in video
as,
games. In video games, they're just
yeah,
like, who cares? It's just a game. He sounds close
mhm,
enough.
yeah, and it's just this thing where, um I guess what I'm trying to get at is I feel like we're at this stage with video game development specifically where um, the viewer genuinely does care about the product. Not to say that they didn't originally, but when I mean they genuinely care about the product, they care about who's making it and who's exchanging hands with it now. Where before it really didn't matter to you. The only thing that really mattered was, like, it's Insomniac or it's Bethesda, because
I feel
video
like
games
even
take,
that
like, this
didn't matter
whole
to most people. I never knew what
yeah,
companies made the games I like. They just knew the
hell
franchises
yeah,
themselves.
hell, it could have been as simple as, like, "This is a PlayStation game. This is an Xbox game. I
I
only do
mean,
PlayStation
to
games,"
to,
right?
to be honest, it came usually came down to this has a really cool cover, or at best beyond that, oh, this is a
Mhm.
Sly Cooper game, and I really like my other Sly Cooper game. I didn't know
Yeah,
who
but
like
then they play Sly
fucking
Cooper 4 and they're like, "This feels different."
that one sucks.
Yeah. But, it's definitely weird because you can't, um I think it's the same thing with, like, animation because it just takes more people and more time and more studios to make these larger products. Like, with a comic book, it tends to be you have a writer and an artist, or maybe they're both in the same, and then maybe you have an editor, like, that's 3 people, and you can easily just look at a comic book and be like, "Oh, yep, I know that name. I love the guy who makes, the Deadpool, and his name's on this fucking Moon Knight cover, so I guess I'll just read his Moon Knight version, see if it's any good." And it's like, yeah, you can do that, and you can know what you're expecting. The thing that you can't do with video games is that exact same concept because you can be like, yeah, Scott Cawthon made this game because he was the only one making the game. Like that you can do. That you can like see with your eyes and be like, you know, I've Scott Cawthon's made these first 3 games. I'm gonna roll the dice and play another one because it is just him, right?
I
But
would
then
argue that Hideo Kojima is a walking counterexample.
that is true. But I think where that really lies is because he's a good director, right? Like, he's actually like, that's another thing with Nintendo games, right? Their direction has always been spot on for the most part with the games that they make, where even if it's different, you can still see the vision because the main directors of those games that genuinely care about their IPs, um, will do the fucking grind. They'll go into the weeds and they'll talk to everyone a part of their team, even if it's
Exactly.
just the humble like sound engineer. He'll be like, "Yeah, we need something a little bit more floaty," or they'll literally go out of their way to program or use their skills that they originally had in the company to help a team out. Like, and that's what you want out of like any lead. You want that out of any boss, manager, lead. You want someone who's not only been in the industry, who's done their time to get to the position they're in, but also has made the product you're making right now so that they can provide you with like honestly the feedback and like the things that they had to run into with shorter times and even less budget and they were still able to make the product on time and it be amazing. And so to have their knowledge and wisdom on top of that is like it is undescribable the amount of wealth that comes with. And I think the biggest problem we see in America at the very least is there are directors in America that just don't do their jobs, right?
Yeah.
There's
Well, it's
you
the
know,
it's the
it
Todd Howard effect. It's like he used to, and now he
mhm,
gets in. He gets into this top position because he was the guy at the head of these games that were really successful. But now, like, he's no longer in a position where he's effective because he's risen too high in the ranks. It's what's the character from The Office? The main character,
Michael.
uh, yeah,
Michael
Michael
Scott.
Scott.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
also known as like the Michael Scott effect, where it's like this guy was got to a management position because he was so good at this company at the sales position. Except he sucks at the management position. They can't demote
Mhm.
him, and they can't fire him. So they just deal with this guy who's in a management position because he earned his way there, and it's hurting the company. It's the same thing with people like Todd Howard. It's like this guy was incredibly good at being in this like lower position of like being the creative lead on all these games, and now he's like in charge of the whole company, and he's not good at that, and it's just
Yeah.
like hurting the content.
And I think that's really where the rubber meets the road with the FNAF series, right? Because we've seen interviews with Scott Cawthon or just like just him talking in general, where it's like, especially about security breach, where it's like it's very clear to like anyone who watches these videos, like he was very hands off and he was kind of upfront about that, where he's like, I just want the people to make their vision, and I just kinda wanna do my own thing, right? And then he has to, like, backtrack after, like, the game turns out to be not so good because the devs didn't have that good of, like,
Honestly, if he wanted to do that, he
just
could
a
have made
lead.
it like an open IP the way like Undertale is, and just said now anyone can make a Five Nights at Freddy's game.
Yeah, honestly, yeah,
I mean,
there's
there
ways
was the
to go about it.
Fazbear initiative, but that kind of failed because like three of the games got canceled and two of them came out.
Well, I'm
And
more
then
saying
one of the creators of that game that came out got canceled immediately. So
just like complete hands off. You guys can do whatever the fuck you want with it now.
I mean, people can make fan games. There's always the fan game,
I mean,
stuff.
yeah, but like I guess my comparison with Undertale is that like Toby Fox will go hard out of his way to support fan games to the point where like he's currently fighting with his publisher to like allow things like Undertale Yellow to use his music.
Yeah, it's the Valve effect, right? Because Valve understands, like,
Oh
people
yeah,
making
Valve
fan
just like
games.
lets people
Yeah.
make pay like fan not like that's even further. Valve is just like
Mhm.
not only will we let you make fan games of our games, but we'll let you sell them for actual money.
Yeah, on our
No,
own store.
no one does
Yeah.
that anymore out of principle, mainly because of Hunt Down the Freeman. But even that's kind of sad because it's like there's certain like Entropy Zero. It's like that probably should be paid for,
That
but
should be
it's
like
not.
5 bucks or like 10 bucks or
Yeah,
something. It should be anything. I wanna give these people money, right?
but like they
Because they
don't
did a good
because it's
job.
been so tainted by things like Hunt Down the Freeman.
Yeah. I would have literally paid like 20 bucks
Hmm.
for Portal Mel's story because of just how well written and just how good the gameplay is, where it's like, I cannot discern whether or not this is a fucking Valve game or not. The only reason I know it's not like a game made specifically by the Valve team is because of the voice acting, because they weren't able to get
Hmm.
like,
Like
A-list
Alan
voice
McLean.
actors because it's just a fan project. And it's like, damn. Like if that's the only thing that really like separates, the wheat from the chuff or whatever. It's like that's nothing. Like that's like a drop in the hat, you know? Yeah, it's just it's a wacky world we live in right now where especially with the whole Mickey Mouse thing where it's like the whole 100-year copyright nonsense. It's just I don't know if it's a sad state of affairs where it's like the actual creator has to not only tell people that they can make stuff with their IP, but have to go out of their way to like
Yes, that's
waggle
despicable to
fingers
me.
at the copyright people
Like
and be like, "Stop copying it."
The fact that Toby Fox has to fight so hard to let people use his music, not to protect his music, but to just be like anyone can do whatever they want with it. Sparkles and happiness, like these fucking soulless demons come in and go. Actually, we're going to keep it from you, and you can't do anything that you want. It makes me want him to just like, you know how with Game Grumps they went on tour and they were like, wow, touring really sucks because all the companies are shit, and then they made their own touring company and now it's like the main touring
Mhm.
company for YouTubers.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
I,
what happens.
I fucking want Toby Fox to do the same thing with music publishing. Like, hey, if you want to publish your music and just let anyone use it because you're only in it for the art, like publish with us, and we're not gonna go
Yeah,
around fucking copyright claiming people.
yeah, people like I don't know what it is that nowadays, but it's like people don't understand like Warner Brothers or any of these companies that are like big IP holders is the only reason they're big IP holders is because they've just been in the game for like 90 years. Like you can do the same exact thing. You can get a
Yeah,
group of friends on a Discord and be like, "Hey, you know what? Let's just make a fucking LLC and be like, yeah, we protect our own stuff and we go and we do the business side of things and you just maintain it. Yeah. You don't even have to hire people. You just have to be your own like spokesman, right? And just protect your stuff. Like you don't need these people, especially with the internet. You don't need these people. If you know how to read a contract and know that you're not getting screwed over like millions upon millions of monies, then it's like yeah, you don't know like, literally, especially with, like, fucking Chat GPT now, it's like,
mm.
you could I'm sure as shit, you could just plug in a contract into
Oh yeah,
Chat GPT and be like, "Hey, am I getting screwed on this?" And then it's like, "Yeah, there's this weird clause here," and then you can actually go and get a lawyer and be like, "Hey, can you help me out here, like, leasing my music because I have my own company
yeah.
that, you know, protects my
Not
stuff."
only can ChatGPT do that, but that was like one of the first things they were doing with like GPT-3, like before the finished like version even came out. Like
I
it's
yeah.
huge.
It genuinely it makes me curious if, like, in the near off future, we're even gonna have things like people try to slip things past like
Hmm.
humans, like in contracts. It might even be to the point where it's like things become so like clear cut and like simple because of the simple fact that you can like bullshit a bullshitter by using technology
Yeah.
that it's like it just goes to the wayside. Like human lying becomes like not important as it used to be because like there's
Well,
just no way to lie to
that's
anyone.
the fucked up thing with contracts that they often don't involve lying. They involve obfuscation because
Mhm.
legalese is really hard to read for normal people. But now that barriers have been broken down and people can't fuck with you anymore like that.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's gonna be a whole new wave of like I've been thinking about this for a long time now. I don't know if we want to get into it on this podcast. We might do it in another episode, but I've always had this like dogmatic or like this dreamscape view of what the future was gonna look like. And I think it's starting to get closer and closer to that where either automation is gonna be so streamlined that people are gonna be left wondering what to do with their lives, and then they have to either end up making their own creative endeavors or just find meaning in life that doesn't require work. And then we're gonna get to the point where, you see this a lot in like kind of sci-fi futures, especially with like Star Trek, where it's like the crux of what you do with your life is more about you living rather than the work that you do, and in life just becomes a creative endeavor of just figuring out what you want to do with life rather than I have to survive. And
Yeah.
it's seeming to be that the more that these weird technologies get involved, especially with like 3D printing, where I'll say this much, it is a barrier to entry to learn how to make your own stuff with 3D printing, but that's another kinda like Star Trek-y concept where it's like, you don't need to go to the store to buy a fucking plastic fork, you can just print one, or you can just like, You don't need this complex component because you can just get your 3D printer to print you out a chip, and it's like it works. It's like, well, hot damn. What do I need like all this other like in between shit for?
It's gonna be
It
wild when they
don't.
figure out like metal 3D printing. Well, they actually already have that. But,
No, it
like,
already exists.
yeah, but like
Yeah.
there's some company where not company, but like a university where their main goal and one of their major projects is we want to be able to print out a phone and it just works right off the thing. But I don't think that'll ever actually happen because of the fact that like you need like a silicon chip and you can't just 3D print that. You need to get it from a foundry or something. The
Yeah, there's
alternative, the more realistic version of that though that I think could actually happen is instead of something crazy like you 3D print out an entire finished phone, is instead like you 3D print out basically all the components that can just be printed, and then you just click like a CPU into it, and now it just works like a CPU and a battery.
it's fascinating that you say that, Tom, because there is processes that are automated, and it's just all it really takes is like one guy or a couple of guys or anyone to really just like think like, okay, how can I combine a 3D printer with a stock picker that picks out PC chips and knows exactly where to place them on a board, and then how do I combine that with a laser printer that actually lasers sketches out PCB boards. So that way it just becomes this weird streamlined process where you have like these three separate printers that like all make the parts you need and then it just combines them all together. Like that's not so crazy that we can have that. Like not too long ago, right? It's like people thought you had to make, cotton, like you had to make cotton clothes by hand and stuff, and then
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden you get a fucking loom and all this other shit, and then it just starts to like it starts to like make overabundances to the point where you have textiles and stuff like that, and then you have less people having to make their own clothes, and not only that, less people having to even like sew their own clothes and stuff like that because they can just buy new clothes that are cheaper than the materials it would cost to repair your original ones, and it's like, holy hell! Like, could you imagine that kind of technology just being in like the corner of your room? It's like, yeah, there's like so much cool shit out right now that it just takes the technology to get smaller or for someone to get smarter to combine them all together to make it seamless, right? And it will happen. It's like an inevitability. Like I'm sure it'll be the size of your refrigerator, the 3D printer that makes you a phone and a turkey
Yeah.
dinner, but it will work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just how it goes. But yeah, kind of weird.
Crazy times we're living in.
Yeah, I
You know
fucking
Crazy.
hate
what?
those. Yeah, yeah.
The moment I realized like, oh, the world is different now. There was like a before Chat GPT and now there's after Chat GPT. Was when I was thinking about like story ideas for Freya, like just character I'm writing, and I was like, I'm gonna go on Chat GPT and just type out my ideas and like ask for feedback. And it gave like extremely useful feedback and like gave me really good ideas. And then I had like a back and forth conversation with this fucking robot about a creative endeavor, a purely creative endeavor with no elements of like engineering or objectivity whatsoever. Purely by just being like, this is the tone I'm talking in, and this is the topic, and it was just like, oh my god, what the fuck is happening?
hmm Yeah, it's yeah, I hate those people, by the way, who make those weird posts. I was gonna mention this earlier. That are like, "Oh man, I'm not young enough to be in like cool times when like we were
Mm-hmm.
fighting the Civil War, but I'm also not old enough to be in the stars and shit." It's like, dude, are you joking me? Look around you, like, stop fucking like dreamboating these like ideas that you have. Like, look around you, like
Mm-hmm.
we are in the future, and it's insane right now. You're just too busy, like, stuck in your own fantasies to
I
realize
I
just
can
how
understand
amazing it is.
I can understand like the ennui. I think that you should be able to get over that, but I can understand the feeling of like it's human nature to be like I want to go out and discover things that people have never discovered before, and I want it to be
Mhm,
like there's concepts of like invention. Like it's very hard to invent anything new for a normal person. You don't really have like garage inventors anymore that like make a product that can be productized. you don't really have, you can't go to like an island and be like, no one's ever been to this island before because we have satellites. And the only, like, if you're that kind of person and that's viscerally what you want to be, you want to discover things, it's like, well, there's Mars, but that's probably not going to happen until after, like, at least a couple more generations. So I understand that feeling. It's just, I think that it's important to find meaning in other places and just be like, it is what it is.
Yeah, I think my main problem with those people is that it's not necessarily they think that there's no way for them to like invent something new or like or just travel or just like find new places to settle because there are places that are just still not like humans don't live there, and it's not because like they're treacherous or it's just evil. It's just because like there's just the roads haven't been built out there yet, and so they haven't like done the hard work of not even exploring, just going out there to live there. But I guess my real problem with these like this that kind of mindset is they're dreaming. It's the same. It's the difference between a dreamer and a doer, right? The dreamers will always dream, but they'll just never do anything. They'll just be stuck sleeping, right? The doers will be like, "Oh, that's a neat dream. I'm gonna
Uh,
go make it now,"
yeah,
right?
I guess that the difference is when those people say that, when they say I was born too early for me to do this, this, and this, uh, they don't really mean themselves. They more mean humanity. It's like
I don't know.
I want to live to see humanity colonize Mars, but I probably won't live that long. Even if I would never want to go there because I'm too scared of like rocket technology and I feel like I would get exploded. It's like I would still just want to see that happen. And I can understand the kind of sense of disappointment of being like, man, my fucking parents got to see the moon landing, my grandparents got to see this other like invention, like the invention of like television and radios. What am I gonna get to see? And then, you find out like, oh, like AI shit.
Yeah,
But then that's
cool 3D printers,
3D
fucking
printers is a
everything.
big thing. 3D printers is I almost like that 3D printers are so mundane. Like they kind of, it's interesting, they snuck through. Like there was never like a craze for 3D printers. They just kind of very quietly got better in the background, and now you'll be walking around a store and you'll look at something and you'll be like, "Oh, look, there's 3D printer lines." That's funny.
Y It's crazy, Tom, it is insane to me because I've been following 3D printers, since I was a wee babby
Hmm.
because, like, I was a part of the maker scene of just, like, those people who would just, like, make props out of garbage or
Yeah.
the people who make props out of cardboard, and the first, like, 3D printer that, like, dropped on the scene, which was, like it's so archaic now, but, like, you get where
Hmm.
it's coming from in its design, and just to see, like, it's, like it's ridiculous the evolution of 3D printers. It's probably the fastest, like, changing technology I've seen in my own lifetime. Like,
Hmm.
even with, like, smartphones and stuff, like, the only thing that really changed with smartphones was, like, displays and cameras and, like,
Well, that's the thing with
process.
smartphones. Like smartphones are really weird because they didn't really have an evolution. It was like there was before the iPhone, and then there was the
Yeah.
iPhone, and now that's just the standard.
Yeah, and all the technology was there. It just took one person to be like, "Hey, what if I combine these?" Right? And that's the same thing with, like, 3D printers where it's like, "Hey, all this technology exists. What if I just smack this thing onto my 3D printer so it allows me to fucking 3D print chocolate?" And it's like, "Well,
Hmm.
fucking A, do it." Right?
Yeah, I saw that video. The guy fucking with the chocolate 3D printer.
Mhm.
Was he able to do it?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You can just buy. It's not even like a guy made one. It's you can just buy a chocolate 3D printer now.
Mhm.
Oh, that's awesome.
It
Can
can
I have one?
I think they're not that. He was saying like, oh, this would make a good like beginner 3D printer because it's very simple and
Yeah.
you don't need to worry. Like he, one of the things that was cool is he said was like, there's no such thing as failed prints. You can just eat it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's also crazy other technologies like the 3D printer that uses sugar to 3D print, and then there was a subsect of that where someone was like, "Oh, you use sugar to 3D print like the parts you need." Well, what if I turn that into a candy printing machine, which then it creates this whole other like category of candy now because it's like 3D printed candy can do so much weird geometry stuff that like opens up the door to like crazy like avenues
Really,
that like
I could
for the
probably.
most part,
I feel
yeah.
like I feel like a candy that had like like a 3D printed interior structure, like just support material, would have such a good texture because it just kind of it would almost be like a wafer. It's like it crumbles in your mouth with like a bite.
Not only that, but like the structures that they can make with it is outstanding. And you'd think like candy making, what a concept! It's literally it's so old. It's old technology. Like there's no way candy making is ever gonna like change in the next like 50 years. And like all it takes is 3D printers to enter into the scene. And it's like, well, nope, here's something new. And it's like, well, goddamn, it's ridiculous. I love it. But yeah. I think that was a good podcast. I think that was good. I think wrap it up, sell it.
Yep.
So
I accidentally kept putting Digby's penis on screen. Or not Digby's, Ralsei's penis on screen.
Ralsei, yeah.
oh, you should have put Digby's on screen. That would have made me happy.
Well, I'll draw
I hope you
a
make like
Digby penis.
extremely like hardcore porn on the next episode, Tom. It'll be a lot of
Yeah.
fun to censor out.
Yeah, I think that you should draw Digby with a hyper penis, and it's just like really, really big, and then he's
It's
like,
so big that I have to just censor the whole canvas.
yeah, and then he's like right next to his mom, and his mom was like, "Hey, want me to help you out with that?" And he goes, "Yeah,
He goes, not right now.
not right now."
I'm
It's
on a
so true.
podcast,
He
not
would
right
say that.
now.
Mom,
He
I'm
would
doing a
say that.
podcast.
Yeah.
He'd be like, maybe tomorrow."
He's not interested at all.
hmm
That's in character for my Digby. He doesn't fucking give a shit.
And then Rigby, Rigby walks up and he's like,
Rigby runs in.
And he goes, "Oh, yeah."
he's like,
And
"Oh, he's not fucking his mother."
So basically, you're saying like something like this.
And then Mordecai is like, "Rigby, yeah, something like that exactly."
Rigby,
And
you
then
can't
Mordecai
do.
is like, "Rigby,
Their names are
you're not
their
supposed to
names.
be in this dimension.
Their
Get out of
voices are
here."
their voices are too normal. You can't like do good impersonations.
yeah, because they're just like voices of real people. It's depressing. I can't do a Mordecai.
And then Pops is like,
Oh,
"Bad show, jolly bad show. Incest is bad."
you can't do that on television.
Yeah, and then he starts crying.
Oh, Pops.
And then
Oh
he's
no,
man.
bro! Is that his
Oh,
mom?
no, bro.
Oh no, bro.
And then High Five Ghost comes in and gets shot in the head and he dies instantly.
Oh no, bro.
And then Muscle Man
Say,
goes.
Yeah. I hope you're still recording this, Tom. It's
I
all
am.
comedy gold. We gotta sell this to Cartoon Network.
And then Skips is like, "I've only seen this once before."
I've only done this once before.
I've
I
only
know.
had incest once before. Yeah.
Hold on, I know a guy for incest.
Hold on, I know a guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's Muscle Man. I know a guy, bro.
I know a guy. Yeah.
Hey, Muscle Man, you
And
know
then-
a guy to cure incest spells? Yeah, 1 second, bro.
And then he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna call my friend Jacob. He'll be here in about 5 minutes. Just make sure that Digby doesn't take off the condom."
Yeah. Make sure he doesn't take off the cock ring.
Oh no, that would be like the dramatic, like the second half of the episode where everything's going to shit. Like he's fucking his
balls
mom
are
and
filled with
the condom is like starting to break and they have to like fight off all the ghosts.
What ghosts? What?
It's a fucking regular show episode. I don't know.
Yeah.
It'd be like demons coming in trying
They
to like
do
rip.
that a lot,
They would
actually,
like send
Tom.
in
Now that you
ghosts to
mention
like
that,
rip up the condom and he has to like finish before it breaks.
they always use that as like a fucking like that. Like 1 out of every 6 episodes of regular show is literally just like ghost ripped from like the ether, like from the ground, from hell, and it's like they show up.
It's that, or like I was more referencing how a lot of episodes it'll be like, I'm the character and I have a goal. I'm the bad guy and I don't want you to accomplish that goal. I'm not gonna let you stop my friend from accomplishing the goal. You know, like the episode where he wants to like eat the omelet, and like all the fucking agents start running up and like trying to stop him.
Yeah, or like the fucking Bones one,
or the one with Billy Mitchell.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
all
that
of
one
them, or
too.
just all of them.
Yeah, that's like the formula.
Yeah.
And then there's Ghost trying to rip off and trying to tear apart the condom, and Digby has
Yeah,
to finish before the condom gets destroyed, so that he
so that it
doesn't
doesn't
come and tell
impregnate
his
his mom.
mom. Yeah. And
There's
then
an
Jacob,
episode
which is
from
Muscle Man's friend, gets there and immediately gets fucking murdered by the ghost. Like they just RPG
Gets
his
sawed
car
in
and he
half,
blows
yeah.
up and
Yeah, the
disappears.
ghosts just
Yeah, he
have an
just blows up.
RPG,
They
but
they always
they're
blow
like
up, that's another thing that always
they're
happens.
like
Yeah,
1800s like Victorian ghosts, but they have an RPG.
yeah.
And then the joke ending of the episode is that like in 5 minutes later he just like fucks his mom again anyway and gets her pregnant. And everyone's like,
And
oh.
they're like, Digby, no.
No,
And it's too
it
late.
wouldn't even be that dramatic. They would just be like, oh, okay. And then it would like go
And then the episode ends.